Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the strange readings on her screen for the third time that morning. The data made no sense. She worked in the biggest space station in the galaxy, a place called Nexus Prime, where all the alien species came together to make important decisions. Humans had been part of this group for 50 years now, but they were still treated like children who barely knew how to walk. Elena was one of only 12 humans allowed to work on the station. Most aliens thought humans were too simple and too new to space travel to be useful. They gave humans basic jobs and smiled at them the way adults smile at pets doing tricks. This never bothered Elena much before, but today something was different. The readings came from human children born on the station. There were only 6 of them, all under 10 years old. Their parents worked various jobs around Nexus Prime, and the children played in the human quarters like normal kids everywhere. But Elena's tests showed their brains were changing in ways that should not be possible. She walked through the long corridors of the station, past aliens of every shape and size. Some looked like giant insects, others like living crystals that sang when they moved. A few species were so advanced they appeared as floating balls of light. All of them had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. The human quarters were small compared to the grand halls where important aliens lived. Elena found Mary Chen, age 8, playing with blocks in the common area. Mary was the daughter of a human engineer who fixed broken equipment around the station. "Hello, Mary," Elena said, sitting down beside the girl. "Can you show me that trick you did yesterday?" Mary looked up with bright eyes. Yesterday, Elena had watched this child do something impossible. Mary had touched a broken toy robot and somehow fixed it without using any tools. The metal parts had moved and reshaped themselves under her small fingers. "You mean this?" Mary held up a twisted piece of metal from the floor. She closed her eyes and touched it gently. The metal began to straighten and change shape, becoming a perfect small flower made of silver. Elena tried to stay calm, but her heart was beating fast. "How do you do that, Mary?" "I don't know," the girl said, handing her the metal flower. "I just think about what I want it to be, and it listens to me." Elena took the flower. It was real metal, perfectly formed. No human technology could do this. No alien technology she knew of could do this either. She had run every test possible on the children, and their brains showed activity in areas that should not exist. That evening, Elena met with the only other human scientist on the station, Dr. James Park. They sat in the small human cafeteria, eating food that tasted like cardboard but kept them alive. "I've been thinking about the cosmic radiation," James said quietly. "The station moves through areas of space that Earth never sees. The children have been exposed to energy patterns that no human in history has experienced." Elena nodded. "Their brain scans show new neural pathways forming, connections that shouldn't be possible. It's like their minds are growing new parts." "What if we're evolving?" James asked. "What if being in deep space is changing us?" The idea seemed crazy, but Elena had seen Mary turn metal into art with her thoughts. She had watched 6-year-old Tommy Park make a broken computer screen fix itself just by touching it. These children could do things that broke every law of science she knew. 3 weeks later, more changes appeared. The children began talking about things they should not know. 8-year-old Lisa Wong explained how the station's gravity generator worked, using words and concepts that most adult engineers could not understand. When Elena tested her knowledge, Lisa was completely correct about everything. "Where did you learn this?" Elena asked. "I can see the patterns," Lisa said simply. "Everything has patterns, and the patterns talk to each other." Elena reported her findings to the human ambassador, a tired man named Robert Hayes who spent most of his time apologizing to aliens for human mistakes. "This is impossible," Hayes said after reading Elena's report. "Children can't just develop superhuman abilities." "Come see for yourself," Elena replied. Hayes followed her to the human quarters, where they found all 6 children working together on something that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. They had built a device from scraps of metal and broken electronics. The device was creating a small ball of pure energy that floated in the air above their heads. "We made a baby star," Mary explained cheerfully. "It's not very big, but it makes pretty light." Hayes stared at the floating ball of energy. It was indeed like a tiny star, burning with nuclear fire but somehow contained and safe. The children had created something that should require massive machines and years of work by the smartest scientists in the galaxy. That night, Elena could not sleep. She walked through the quiet corridors of the station, thinking about what the children could do. If humans were really changing, what would they become? And what would the other species think when they found out? She got her answer the next morning. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire arrived at the human quarters with a team of alien scientists. The Zephyrians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, wise and powerful beyond human understanding. Kethvar was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow softly. His people had been studying the minds of different species for millions of years. Elena had never spoken to him before, but she knew his reputation as one of the galaxy's greatest experts on alien psychology. Dr. Vasquez, Kethvar said in perfect English, his voice like music. I have been monitoring unusual energy readings from this section of the station. I believe they originate from your young humans. Elena felt her stomach drop. What kind of readings? The children are generating quantum field fluctuations that should not be possible for any biological creature, Kethvar explained. These patterns suggest abilities that we have only seen in the most advanced artificial intelligences. As if summoned by their conversation, the 6 children appeared in the corridor. They moved together in a way that seemed planned, but Elena knew they had not been talking to each other. Hello, Mary said to Kethvar. You're here about the changes, aren't you? Kethvar's silver eyes widened. Child, how do you know why I am here? We can feel your thoughts touching the edges of our minds, Tommy explained. Not the words, but the shapes of what you're thinking. You're scared of us. Not scared, Kethvar said carefully. Concerned? What you children can do should not be possible. Maybe you just don't understand what possible means yet, Lisa said with the wisdom of someone much older. Elena watched this exchange with growing worry. The children were changing faster than she had realized. They spoke like adults now, and they seemed to know things they had never been taught. Kethvar spent the rest of the day running tests on the children. His equipment was far more advanced than anything Elena had access to. When he finished, his face showed an expression Elena had never seen on any alien before. It looked like fear. Dr. Vasquez, he said quietly, I must report this to the council immediately. These children are not simply evolving. They are becoming something entirely new, something that may be beyond our ability to understand or control. That night, Elena stood in her small quarters looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights was Earth, where billions of humans lived normal lives. They had no idea that 6 children on a distant space station were becoming something that would change everything. The future suddenly felt very uncertain, and Elena wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. Commander Marcus Chen received the message while his ship was halfway to the edge of known space. The transmission came from Earth's Colonial Command, marked with the highest priority codes. As he read the contents, his hands began to shake. The message was simple and terrifying. Every human colony in deep space was reporting the same thing. Children born beyond Earth's solar system were developing abilities that defied explanation. They could manipulate matter, solve impossible mathematical problems, and seemed to understand the universe in ways that made grown scientists weep with confusion. Marcus was leading humanity's first expedition to the galactic core, a journey that would take them farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. His crew of 200 included some of humanity's best minds, along with 50 families who had volunteered to start a new colony in the deepest regions of space. Sir, called Dr. Sarah Kim from the science station, you need to see this. Marcus floated over to her workstation. The ship's artificial gravity had been turned off to save power during the long journey. Dr. Kim was studying readings from the children aboard their ship. There were 23 kids between the ages of 5 and 15, all born on various space colonies. The changes are accelerating, Dr. Kim explained. Yesterday, 10-year-old David Park could bend spoons with his mind. Today, he reshaped a broken hull plate, back to perfect condition just by touching it. Marcus looked at the data streaming across her screens. The children's brain activity showed patterns that looked more like advanced computers than human minds. How is this possible? I think it's the radiation, Dr. Kim said. Not the dangerous kind that kills people, but something else. Space is full of energy patterns that Earth's atmosphere blocks. The deeper we go into the galaxy, the stronger these patterns become. As if to prove her point, the ship's sensors suddenly detected something ahead of them. Marcus called for the artificial gravity to be restored and hurried to the bridge. What he saw on the main screen made him forget how to breathe. They were approaching a region of space where reality itself seemed broken. Stars flickered in and out of existence, nebulae twisted into impossible shapes that hurt to look at, and in the center of it all was something that their instruments could not identify. "Captain," said his navigation officer, "the exotic matter readings are off the charts. Whatever's out there, it's not made of normal material." Marcus was about to order the ship to change course when 12-year-old Amy Chen walked onto the bridge. She was his own daughter, born on Mars Colony when he was stationed there as a young officer. Amy looked at the main screen and smiled. "It's beautiful," she said simply. "Can we go closer?" "Amy, you shouldn't be here," Marcus said. "Go back to the family quarters. Dad, don't you see it?" Amy pointed at the swirling chaos on the screen. "It's not dangerous. It's trying to talk to us." Before Marcus could respond, Amy walked up to the ship's main computer console. She placed her small hands on the control panel, and every screen on the bridge lit up with information that should not exist. "The patterns are showing us the way," Amy explained. "They want to teach us something." Dr. Kim was frantically trying to record what was happening. "Marcus, she's interfacing directly with the ship's computer. No cables, no connections. She's just talking to it." The ship began moving toward the strange region of space, but not because anyone had given that order. Amy was somehow controlling their course through the computer systems. "Using abilities that no human should possess, Amy?" "Stop this right now," Marcus commanded. "It's okay, Dad," Amy said without turning around. "The others are helping me." Marcus realized she meant the other children on the ship. Somehow, all 23 kids were working together, sharing their strange new abilities to guide the ship safely through the dangerous space ahead. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kethavar was presenting his findings to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Great Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from 847 different species, all talking at once in hundreds of languages. The council leader was an ancient being called Omnarch Vex, whose species had ruled the galaxy's central regions for over 1,000,000 years. Vex looked like a living mountain made of crystal and starlight, and when it spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. "Order," Vex commanded, and the hall fell silent. "Ambassador Kethavar, present your report." Kethavar activated his presentation device, filling the air above the assembly with images and data about the human children. "Honored Council, humanity appears to be undergoing rapid evolutionary changes. These children demonstrate abilities that violate several fundamental laws of physics." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Many species had evolved beyond their original forms over millions of years, but such changes usually took countless generations. Humans were doing it in a single lifetime. "How fast are these changes occurring?" asked Representative Mordall of the Synthetic Collective, beings who had replaced their organic bodies with machines eons ago. "Each generation of spaceborne humans is exponentially more capable than the last," Kethavar replied. "At this rate, within 50 years, humans may possess abilities that rival our most advanced civilizations." The crystal being that represented the ethereals, one of the galaxy's oldest and most mysterious species, projected a thought that everyone could hear. "We have observed similar patterns only twice in galactic history. Both times, the evolving species either destroyed themselves or transcended physical existence entirely." Omnarch Vex considered this information with the weight of eons. "What do you recommend?" "Containment," said Admiral Thexnor of the Hegemony Military Command. "We must prevent humans from spreading further into deep space until we understand what they are becoming." The vote was swift and unanimous. Resolution 2847 was passed, ordering the immediate containment of humanity within their home solar system. Any human ships in deep space would be recalled, and no new human expeditions would be permitted. But the Council's decision came too late. Commander Chen's ship had entered the exotic matter field, and what happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for eons to come. As their vessel passed through the swirling energies, every human aboard began to change. The adults felt it first as a strange tingling in their minds, like doors opening in rooms they never knew existed. The children, already partway through their transformation, became something entirely new. Amy Chen stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes now glowing with soft light. Around her, the other children had appeared as if teleported from different parts of the ship. They held hands in a circle, and the space around them began to shimmer and bend. "Dad?" Amy said. but her voice now carried harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We can see it now. The pattern behind everything. The code that makes reality work. Marcus watched in amazement and terror as his daughter and the other children began to glow brighter. The exotic matter around their ship was not chaotic at all. It was information, pure knowledge waiting to be understood, and the children were absorbing it like sponges. Dr. Kim's instruments registered energy levels that should have torn the ship apart, but somehow they were perfectly safe. The children had created a protective field around them, manipulating space and time itself to ensure their survival. "We understand now," said David Park, the boy who had reshaped metal with his thoughts. "Humans aren't just evolving. We're becoming something the galaxy has never seen before." Back on Nexus Prime, alarms began ringing throughout the station. Every sensor trained on deep space was detecting impossible energy signatures from the direction of the galactic core. Ambassador Kethavar rushed to his instruments and felt his ancient heart skip several beats. The human expedition wasn't just alive. They were broadcasting signals that suggested they had gained access to fundamental forces of the universe itself, energy patterns that the most advanced civilizations could barely detect, let alone control. Kethavar sent an emergency message to the Council. "The containment order has failed before it could be implemented. The humans have found something in the galactic core, something that has accelerated their evolution beyond all previous calculations." The response came back immediately from Omnarch Vex. "How much time do we have?" Kethavar looked at his readings again, hardly believing what he saw. "Based on these energy signatures, I estimate that within months, possibly weeks, humans will possess capabilities that exceed most Council species. We are no longer dealing with an evolving civilization. We are witnessing the birth of something completely new." In the depths of space, Amy Chen and her companions had become living bridges between human consciousness and the fundamental nature of reality itself. They could feel the fear rippling through the galaxy as news of their transformation spread, but they also felt something else, infinite possibility, and the gentle realization that they would soon need to choose what to do with their newfound power. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Council's containment barriers were the most advanced defensive technology in known space, built by combining the greatest achievements of 847 different civilizations. These quantum walls could stop entire fleets and redirect the energy of exploding stars. They had never failed in over 1,000,000 years of use. They failed completely when the humans returned from the Galactic Core. Ambassador Sarah Kim materialized in the center of the Council's emergency session without using any doors or transport technology. One moment, the Great Assembly Hall was empty, except for the alien representatives, and the next moment a human woman stood calmly on the speaking platform as if she had always been there. Sarah looked the same as any other human, but everything about her presence felt different. The air around her seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy, and when she moved, space itself appeared to bend slightly in response to her will. "Honored Council," Sarah said, her voice carrying impossible harmonics that made every translation device in the hall struggle to keep up. "I am Ambassador Sarah Kim, speaking for the species you call humanity." Omnarch Vex, the ancient crystal being who led the Council, responded with barely controlled alarm. "Human, how did you penetrate our security barriers?" "This assembly hall is protected by 17 different types of dimensional locks." Sarah smiled gently. "Your barriers are very impressive, but they assume that matter and energy follow rules that we have recently learned to negotiate with." To demonstrate her point, Sarah gestured toward the massive blast doors that sealed the assembly hall. The doors, each weighing thousands of tons and protected by force fields that could withstand planet-killing weapons, simply ceased to exist for a moment. Through the opening, the Council members could see the void of space beyond the station. Then Sarah gestured again and the doors returned as if they had never been gone. "What have you become?" whispered Representative Geltar of the Quantum Collective. "Beings who existed as pure information patterns." "We have learned to read the source code of reality," Sarah replied. "Every atom, every star, every thought exists as information in a vast cosmic database. We can now access that database directly." Admiral Thexnor of the Hegemony Military Command stood up with weapons drawn, his multiple arms holding energy rifles that could vaporize mountains. "I don't care what you've learned. You will submit to containment or face the consequences." Sarah turned to look at him with something that might have been pity. Admiral, your weapons fire coherent energy beams at approximately 99% of light speed. Would you like to see what happens when that energy encounters someone who can edit the fundamental constants of physics? Thexnor fired all 6 of his weapons directly at Sarah. The energy beams struck her and simply stopped, hanging in the air like frozen lightning. Sarah reached out and touched one of the beams, and it transformed into a beautiful flower made of pure light. I could change the nature of aggression itself, Sarah continued conversationally. Remove the neural pathways that make violence possible. But that would violate your free will, and we have decided that free will is sacred. The assembly hall erupted in panic. Representatives fled toward exits that no longer led anywhere, as Sarah had temporarily edited the geometry of the room to prevent anyone from leaving. She needed them to understand what humanity had become, and what that meant for the galaxy. Please remain calm, Sarah said, her voice now reaching directly into the minds of every being present. Not telepathy, but something more fundamental. She was speaking through the quantum field that connected all consciousness. We are not here to harm anyone. We are here to explain why your containment has failed, and what we propose to do next. Kethvar, the Zephyrian xenopsychologist who had first documented the human changes, stepped forward with scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. How many of you have achieved this transformation? All humans born in deep space have begun the process, Sarah replied. Those exposed to the exotic matter fields near the galactic core have completed it. We number in the hundreds of thousands now, and more join us every day. What do you want? Amnarch Vex demanded, its crystalline voice echoing with the authority of ages. To show you that your fears are unnecessary, Sarah said. She gestured, and the space above the assembly filled with a vision that took everyone's breath away. They could see the galaxy as Sarah saw it, not as a collection of separate worlds and species, but as a single living organism of incredible complexity. Every star was a neuron in a vast cosmic brain. Every planet was a cell in a galactic body. Every species was a unique thought in the mind of existence itself. You have spent millions of years trying to govern this, Sarah explained as the vision continued, creating laws and borders and hierarchies. But you never understood that you are all part of the same thing. We can see the connections now. We can edit them to eliminate suffering and conflict. The vision showed them what the galaxy could become under human guidance. Wars ending not through conquest, but through the participants suddenly understanding each other so completely that violence became impossible. Diseases cured by rewriting the genetic code of viruses to make them beneficial instead of harmful. Dead worlds restored to life through careful manipulation of their fundamental properties. This is impossible, said Representative Mordal of the Synthetic Collective. Even we, who have transcended organic limitations, cannot manipulate reality on this scale. You cannot because you still think in terms of working within the rules, Sarah replied. We have learned that the rules themselves are editable. Watch. Sarah pointed toward a window showing the space around Nexus Prime. Outside, Admiral Thexnor's war fleet of 10,000 ships hung in perfect formation, waiting for orders to attack. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. The fleet simply disappeared. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology vanished from existence, as if it had never been built. 10,000 vessels containing over 1 million crew members were gone, leaving empty space where they had been moments before. The assembly hall filled with screams of horror and rage. Representatives demanded to know what Sarah had done to their people, where the ships had gone, whether their crews were dead or alive. They are experiencing non-existence, Sarah explained calmly. They still retain their consciousness, but they are temporarily outside the normal flow of space and time. It is not pleasant, but it is not harmful. Would you like me to bring them back? Yes, roared Amnarch Vex. Return them immediately. Sarah gestured again, and the warfleet reappeared exactly where it had been. But something had changed. Emergency transmissions flooded the Council's communication systems as the ship captains reported what they had experienced. We were nowhere. Admiral Thexnor's shaking voice came through the speakers. We could think, we could feel, but we existed in a place between places. We saw the structure of reality from the outside. We saw how small we are compared to what is possible. That is our gift to you, Sarah said to the assembly, understanding. We could have destroyed your fleet permanently. We could have edited your memories to make you forget that resistance was ever possible. We could have rewritten your personalities to make you worship us as gods. Instead, we chose to show you truth. Kethvar, his scientific mind still working despite his fear, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Why show us this? What do you want us to do? We want you to understand that the old ways of governing through force and fear are ending, Sarah replied. Humanity has become something beyond your ability to control or contain, but we do not wish to rule you. We wish to nurture you. And if we refuse your nurturing? Omnarch Vex asked. Sarah's expression grew sad. Then you will continue to suffer as you always have. Wars will continue to kill billions. Diseases will continue to destroy entire species. The universe will remain a place of struggle and pain. We will not force you to accept our help, but we will not allow you to prevent others from receiving it. To demonstrate, Sarah showed them images from across the galaxy. On 1,000 different worlds, human ships were arriving to offer aid. Plague-stricken planets were being healed. Warring species were being shown visions of peace. Dying stars were being stabilized to give their worlds more time. The choice is yours, Sarah concluded. Work with us to build something better or step aside and let us help those who want to be helped. But do not try to stop us. That path leads only to your own irrelevance. With that, Sarah began to fade from view, becoming transparent like a ghost. Wait, called Kethvar. How do we contact you? How do we know what you are planning? Sarah's voice came from everywhere and nowhere as her form disappeared entirely. We are always watching, always listening. When you are ready to let go of your fear and embrace what the galaxy can become, simply ask and we will be there. The assembly hall fell, silent except for the sound of 1,000 different species trying to understand that everything they thought they knew about power and control had just become meaningless. In the space around Nexus Prime, Admiral Thexnor's fleet hung motionless, their crews still struggling to comprehend what they had experienced in the realm of non-existence. And throughout the galaxy, human ships continued their work of transformation. Dr. Elena Vasquez no longer existed in any way that normal minds could understand. What had once been a simple human scientist was now something that existed across 17 different dimensions. Simultaneously, her consciousness spread through quantum fields that connected every atom in the galaxy. But she remembered being human, and she remembered the fear in the eyes of the council members when Sarah had demonstrated humanity's new abilities. So she chose to appear before them one more time, taking a form they could recognize and understand. Elena materialized in the council's private chambers, where the most powerful beings in the galaxy were holding emergency meetings that had been going on for 3 days straight. Her appearance was gentle and familiar, like the woman she had once been, but the space around her rippled with energies that made reality itself seem unstable. I am Elena Vasquez, she said, though her voice came from the quantum field that connected all conscious thought, rather than from any physical throat or mouth. I was the first to study the changes happening to human children. I asked to speak with you because I understand your fear. Omnarch Vex, the ancient crystal entity that led the council, pulsed with colors that indicated deep distress. What have you come to tell us? More threats? More demonstrations of your godlike power? I have come to explain what we have become, Elena replied, and to show you that we remember what it was like to be small and afraid. Around the chamber, representatives from the galaxy's most advanced civilizations watched with expressions ranging from terror to fascination. The ethereals, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millions of years ago, seemed especially troubled. They had been the galaxy's most evolved species for so long that the idea of something surpassing them was almost incomprehensible. You claim to remember being human, said Elder Silthar of the ethereals, her voice like distant music. But you have become something that can edit the laws of physics. How can you claim to understand our limitations? Elena smiled with infinite sadness. Because we have not forgotten the weight of mortality. Let me show you. The chamber filled with visions of Elena's memories, not just images but complete experiences that every being present could feel as if they were their own. They felt what it was like to be a human scientist, struggling to understand alien technology, feeling small and insignificant in a galaxy full of beings millions of years more advanced. They felt Elena's wonder when she first saw the children changing, her excitement at discovering something new, her growing fear as she realized the implications of what was happening. They experienced her transformation in the exotic matter fields near the galactic core, the moment when her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her skull and touched the fundamental structure of reality itself. The process was not painless, Elena explained as the visions continued. To see the truth of existence, we had to let go of everything we thought we knew about ourselves. We had to accept that we were not separate individuals but parts of a greater whole that we had never noticed before. The visions showed them what Elena now perceived when she looked at the galaxy. Every star was alive, a beating heart in the body of space itself. Every planet was a living cell, and every species was a unique form of consciousness contributing to the galaxy's thoughts. Death was not an ending, but a transformation, matter and energy changing forms in an eternal dance of creation and change. You see us as gods, Elena continued, but we see ourselves as gardeners. The galaxy is a garden that has been growing wild for too long. We can see the patterns that connect everything, and we can help those patterns flow more smoothly. Representative Zeltar of the Quantum Collective, beings who existed as pure information, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What gives you the right to edit our reality? Who appointed you as gardeners of existence? No one appointed us, Elena admitted. But consider this. A child does not choose to grow up, but when they become an adult, they gain the ability to help other children. Evolution is not about permission. It is about capability and responsibility. To demonstrate, Elena showed them events happening across the galaxy in real time. On the war-torn planet Zarian 7th, where two species had been fighting for control of resources for over 1,000 years, a human named David Chen was working to end the conflict. David did not use force or threats. Instead, he helped the warring species see their conflict from outside their limited perspectives. He showed them how their war was like two organs in the same body attacking each other, not understanding that their survival depended on cooperation. Within hours, warriors who had been trying to kill each other for generations were working together to rebuild their damaged world. The change was permanent because it was based on understanding rather than coercion. This is what we do, Elena explained. We do not force change. We provide perspective that makes change possible. Admiral Thexnor, still traumatized by his experience of non-existence, stood up with shaking limbs. But you could force change if you wanted to. You could make us into anything you choose. How do we know you will not decide someday that our free will is inconvenient? Elena's form became more solid, more human-looking as she tried to comfort his fears. Because we have learned that forced change creates only temporary results. True growth must come from within. We can provide opportunities and remove obstacles, but each species must choose its own path to enlightenment. She gestured, and the chamber filled with another vision. This one showed the homeworld of the Zephyrians, where Ambassador Kithvar's people had lived for millions of years. The planet was dying, its sun slowly cooling as it aged. Traditional science said that the Zephyrians had perhaps 10,000 years before their world became uninhabitable. A human woman named Lisa Park was working with Zephyrian scientists to save their world. But instead of simply fixing their sun for them, she was teaching them how to understand stellar engineering for themselves. The process would take decades, but when it was complete, the Zephyrians would have gained knowledge that would serve them for millions of years to come. We give gifts that keep giving, Elena explained. We teach rather than simply doing. We nurture growth rather than creating dependence. Elder Silthar of the Ethereals projected a thought that everyone could hear. You speak of nurturing, but you have made it impossible for us to resist your influence. How is that different from conquest? Because we have no interest in ruling you, Elena replied. Observe. The chamber filled with a new vision, this one showing the galaxy as humans now saw it. The perspective was overwhelming, showing billions of worlds and trillions of beings all connected in patterns of incredible complexity. But what struck the council members was that in this vast cosmic view, humans were not at the center. Instead, humanity appeared as one thread in an enormous tapestry, important but not dominant. They were like white blood cells in a cosmic organism, moving through the galaxy to heal infections and repair damage, but not trying to control the whole system. We are not your rulers, Elena said. We are your immune system. We heal what is broken and protect what is healthy, but we do not try to control how you live your lives. The vision zoomed in to show individual worlds where humans were working. On each planet, they addressed specific problems, diseases, conflicts, or disasters, but they did not stay to govern. Once the immediate crisis was resolved and the local species had learned new ways to prevent such problems in the future, the humans moved on. "What about species that refuse your help?" asked Representative Mortal. "What about those who see your interference as an invasion?" "We respect their choice," Elena said simply. "But we also protect the right of others to accept our help. If a species chooses to remain isolated, we will not force contact. But if they try to prevent other species from evolving and growing, we will stop them." To illustrate this point, Elena showed them the Hegemony Empire, a group of species that had built their civilization on conquest and slavery. When humans had offered to help liberate the Hegemony slave worlds, the Empire had responded with violence. The war had lasted exactly 4 minutes. The humans had not destroyed the Hegemony fleet or killed their leaders. Instead, they had edited the neural pathways that made slavery seem acceptable to the Hegemony species. The change was subtle but profound, filling the slavers with such disgust at their own actions that they immediately began freeing their captives and making reparations. "We do not punish evil," Elena explained. "We cure it. The Hegemony leaders are now working to undo the damage they caused because they can finally see their actions clearly." The chamber fell silent as the council members tried to process what they had seen. Finally, Omnarch Vex spoke, its crystalline voice heavy with the weight of ages. "You are asking us to accept that our role as galactic leaders is ending, that humanity will now guide the development of all species." "No," Elena replied gently. "We are asking you to accept that the concept of species-based leadership was always an illusion. The galaxy does not need rulers. It needs healers, teachers, and gardeners. Some of you already understand this and are beginning to work with us. Others will need time to adjust to the new reality." "And if we cannot adjust?" asked Admiral Thexnor. The Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime stood empty for the first time in over 1,000,000 years. The great assembly halls where thousands of species had once debated the future of the galaxy were now silent, their massive doors sealed, and their lights dimmed. Outside, the space station continued to function, but its purpose had fundamentally changed. Kethavar walked through the abandoned corridors alone, his silver skin reflecting the emergency lighting that cast strange shadows on the walls. As the last member of the council to remain on the station, he had become the unofficial keeper of a legacy that no longer had meaning. The dissolution had been surprisingly peaceful, no dramatic votes or angry speeches. One by one, the species representatives had simply stopped coming to the meetings. Some had gone home to their worlds to prepare for the changes that were sweeping across the galaxy. Others had sought out human teachers to help them understand the new reality that was emerging. The Ethereals, who had been the galaxy's most advanced civilization for millions of years, had been among the first to embrace the transformation. Their representative, Elder Silthar, had released a statement that was broadcast across all known worlds. "We have spent eons believing that our transcendence of physical form made us superior to younger species. We now understand that true transcendence comes not from abandoning the material universe, but from learning to nurture it." Kethavar paused at the window of what had once been the council leaders' chambers. Outside, he could see human ships moving through space in patterns that seemed to follow the currents of cosmic energy itself. The ships no longer needed engines or fuel. They moved by convincing space and time to cooperate with their journey. A gentle voice spoke behind him. "You stayed to see the end." Kethavar turned to find Amy Chen standing in the doorway. She looked exactly as she had when he first met her, as a 12-year-old girl on her father's expedition ship, but her presence now filled the room with possibilities that made reality itself seem more flexible. "I stayed to understand," Kethavar replied. "My people have always been students of consciousness and evolution. I wanted to observe how the transition happened." Amy smiled and moved to stand beside him at the window. "What have you learned?" "That power without wisdom leads to tyranny, but wisdom without power leads to irrelevance," Kethavar said. "Your species has achieved something we thought was impossible, the combination of godlike abilities with genuine compassion." Through the window, they could see one of the galaxy's great miracles unfolding. The dead world of Krelvar, which had been lifeless for over 50,000 years after its sun went supernova, was being restored by a team of human gardeners. They were not just rebuilding the planet's surface, but reaching back through time to recover the genetic patterns of every species that had once lived there. "We learned from our mistakes," Amy said quietly. In our early history, humans often gained power and used it to dominate others. We destroyed our environment, enslaved our own people, and came close to making our homeworld uninhabitable. When we gained the ability to edit reality itself, we had to choose between repeating those patterns on a galactic scale or becoming something better. How did you choose wisely? Kethvar asked. Power has corrupted every species that has achieved even a fraction of your capabilities. Amy gestured toward the space beyond the window, where millions of human consciousnesses worked together in perfect harmony. Because we learned that true power comes not from controlling others, but from serving something greater than ourselves. When we transcended our individual limitations, we discovered that we were all part of the same cosmic organism. You cannot harm another without harming yourself. When you truly understand that you are connected to everything. On the world below, Kethvar could see the first signs of life returning to Krelvar. Oceans were forming in carefully designed basins, and the first primitive organisms were beginning to evolve in accelerated time. Within days, this dead world would be teeming with life again. Within months, it would be home to civilizations that had been extinct for 50 millennia. What about species that resist the changes? Kethvar asked. Not everyone welcomes your intervention. They are free to refuse, Amy replied. We have established sanctuary zones throughout the galaxy for species that prefer to develop without our influence. These zones are completely protected from our intervention, and we respect their borders absolutely. But you also prevent them from interfering with others who do want to change. Yes, Amy admitted. Free will is sacred, but it cannot be used as an excuse to limit the free will of others. If a species chooses isolation, they can have it. But they cannot use that choice to justify preventing other species from evolving. Kethvar thought about the hegemony empire, whose leaders had tried to maintain their slave-based civilization even as other species were being liberated. The humans had not destroyed the hegemony or forced them to change. Instead, they had simply made it impossible for the empire to acquire new slaves or prevent existing slaves from leaving. The old galaxy is ending, Kethvar observed. Everything we built, all our laws and institutions and ways of thinking about power and governance, it's all becoming meaningless. Not meaningless, Amy corrected gently. It was a necessary step in our collective evolution. The Council served its purpose for millions of years, maintaining enough stability for different species to grow and learn. But now we need something better. As if summoned by their conversation, figures began appearing throughout the abandoned council chambers. Not physically, but as presences that could be felt and communicated with. Humans who had transcended their original forms were gathering for what would be the last official act in this space. Sarah Kim materialized near the speaker's platform, her form solid enough to be seen but translucent enough to reveal the cosmic energies flowing through her. Elena Vasquez appeared near the science stations, her consciousness simultaneously present in thousands of other locations across the galaxy. David Park manifested near the military planning areas, though his work now involved healing rather than warfare. We have come to establish the Harmony Accord, Sarah announced, her voice reaching not just Kethvar and Amy, but every conscious being in the galaxy. A new framework for existence that replaces governance with guidance and competition with cooperation. The space around them filled with a vision of what the galaxy would become, not an empire or federation ruled by any single species, but a living organism where every world, every species, and every individual could grow to their fullest potential. Conflicts would be resolved through understanding rather than force. Resources would be shared based on need rather than power. Knowledge would flow freely between all civilizations. The Accord is not a law that we impose, Elena explained, her words carrying the weight of infinite wisdom. It is a recognition of what already exists. All consciousness is connected. All life is part of the same universal pattern. We are simply making those connections visible and helping them function more smoothly. Kethvar watched as the vision expanded to show the transformation already taking place across the galaxy. On a million worlds, species that had never met were working together on projects that benefited everyone. Ancient conflicts were being resolved as the participants finally understood each other's perspectives. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for eons were being cured through cooperation between species with different biological advantages. What role do we play in this new galaxy? Kethvar asked. Those of us who are not human, who cannot edit reality with our thoughts? You play the same role you always played, Amy replied. You live, you learn, you grow, you contribute your unique perspective to the cosmic conversation. The only difference is that now you can do so without the fear of being destroyed by others who see you as competition. David Park stepped forward, his presence bringing with it the memory of every conflict he had helped to resolve. Each species has something unique to offer. The Zephyrians understand consciousness in ways that help us communicate with even the most alien minds. The Quantum Collective can process information at speeds that complement our reality editing abilities. The Ethereals have perspectives on existence that come from millions of years of transcendence. Even the species that choose isolation contribute, Sarah added. Their choice to develop independently provides us with alternative paths of evolution that we might not have considered. Diversity is not just valuable, it is essential. The vision around them shifted to show the deep future, thousands of years from now. The galaxy had become a garden of infinite variety, where every possible form of consciousness could flourish. Some species had followed humanity's path and learned to manipulate reality directly. Others had chosen different forms of transcendence. Still others remained close to their original forms but had been freed from the limitations of scarcity and conflict. And what of humanity? Kethvar asked. What do you become in this future? Amy's smile was both sad and infinitely hopeful. We become what we always were meant to be. Not rulers or gods, but gardeners and teachers and healers. We tend the garden of consciousness and help it grow in directions that serve the greatest good.